Welcome to this week's episode of Storytime. My name's Charlie Malone, and every week I like to share a story, poem, picture book with you that's special to me and that I hope that you will enjoy. This week's story is The Steadfast Tin Soldier by Hans Christian Andersen. There were once 25 tin soldiers. They were all brothers, for they had all been made from the same tin kitchen spoon. Very smart in their red and blue uniforms, they shouldered arms and looked straight before them. Tin soldiers! Those were the first words they heard in this world when the lid of their box was taken off. A little boy had shouted this and clapped his hands. They were a birthday present, and now he set them out on the table. Each soldier was exactly like the next, except for one who had only a single leg. He had been the last to be molded, and there had not been quite enough tin left. Yet there he stood just as well on his one leg as the others did on their two, and he is the story's hero. On the table where they were placed there were many other toys, but the one that everyone noticed first was a paper castle, the rooms of which you could see right into through its little windows. At the front, some tiny trees were arranged around a piece of mirror, just like a lake. Swans made of wax seemed to float on its surface, gazing at their reflections. The whole effect was quite enchanting, but the most beautiful thing in the entire scene was a young girl who stood in the castle's open doorway. She too was cut out of paper, but her gauzy skirt was of finest muslin. A narrow blue ribbon crossed her shoulder like a scarf and was held with a glittering spangle that was nearly the size of her face. This charming little creature held both of her arms stretched out, for she was a dancer. Indeed, one of her legs was raised so high that the tin soldier could not see it at all. He believed that she had only one leg, just like himself. Now, she would be just the right partner and wife for me, he thought. But she is so grand. She lives in a castle, and I have only a box, and there are 25 of us in that. Certainly no place where she would want to live. Still, I can try to make her acquaintance. So he lay down full length behind a snuff box that was on the table, and from there he had a good view of the castle and the little paper dancer, who continued to stand on one leg without losing her balance. When evening came, all the other tin soldiers were put in their box, and the people of the house went to bed. Now the toys began to have games of their own. They played at visiting and battles and going to parties and dances and having all sorts of adventures. The tin soldiers rattled in their box, for they wanted to join in, but they couldn't get the lid off. The nutcrackers turned somersaults, and the slate pencils squeaked on the slate. There was such a din that the canary woke up and joined in the talk, and what's more, he did it in poetry. The only two who didn't move from their places were the tin soldier and the little dancer. She continued to stand on the point of her toe. He stood just as steadily on his single leg, and never once did he take his eyes from her. Now the clock struck 12. Crack! The lid flew off the snuff box, and a little goblin popped up. There was no snuff inside. It was a toy, a jack-in-the-box. "Tin soldier!" screeched the goblin. "Keep your eyes to yourself!" But the tin soldier pretended not to hear. "All right, just you wait till tomorrow," warned the goblin. And when morning came and the children were up again, the little boy put the tin soldier on the windowsill. The goblin may have been responsible, or perhaps a draught of wind was blowing through. Anyhow, the window suddenly swung open, and out fell the tin soldier, all 3 stories to the ground. It was a terrible fall. His leg pointed upward, his head was down, and he came to a halt with his bayonet stuck between the paving stones. The small boy went out at once to look for the tin soldier, but although they were almost treading on him, he didn't see him. If he had called out, "Here I am," they would have found him easily, but he didn't think it proper behavior to cry out. It began to rain. The drops fell faster and faster. It was a real drenching storm. When it was over, 2 kids passed by. "Look," said one of them, "there's a tin soldier. Let's put him out to sea." So they made a boat of newspaper, put the tin soldier aboard, and set the boat in the fast-flowing gutter at the edge of the street. Away it sped, and the 2 boys ran along beside, clapping their hands. Goodness, what waves there were in that gutter stream, what rolling tides! The paper boat tossed up and down, sometimes whirling around and around, until the soldier felt quite giddy. But he remained as steadfast as ever, not moving a muscle, still looking straight in front of him, still shouldering arms. All at once the boat entered a tunnel under the pavement. Oh, it was dark as in the box at home, but it was a different kind of darkness. "Wherever am I going now?" the tin soldier wondered. "Yes, this must be the goblins' doing. Oh, if only the young woman were sharing this journey with me, I wouldn't care if it were twice as dark." Suddenly, a large water rat rushed out from its home in the tunnel. "Have you a passport?" the rat demanded. "No getting through without a passport." But the tin soldier said never a word. He only gripped his musket more tightly than ever. The boat rushed on, and the rat chased after it. Ugh! How it ground its teeth as it yelled to the sticks and the straws. "Stop him! Stop him! He hasn't paid his toll. He hasn't shown his passport. He doesn't belong here." There was no stopping him, though, for the stream ran stronger and stronger. The tin soldier could see a bright glimpse of daylight ahead, where the end of the tunnel must be. But at the same time, he heard a roaring noise that might have frightened a bolder man. Just imagine. At the end of the tunnel, the stream thundered down into a canal. It was as fearful a ride for him as a plunge down Niagara Falls would have been for us. But he was already so near to the edge that he couldn't stop. The boat raced on, and the poor tin soldier held himself as stiffly as he could. No one could say of him that he even blinked his eye. All at once the little vessel whirled around 3 or 4 times and filled with water to the brim. What could it do but sink? The tin soldier stood in water. Up to his neck, deeper and deeper sank the boat, softer and softer grew the paper, until at last the water closed over the soldier's head. He thought of the lovely tiny dancer whom he would never see again, and in his ears rang the words of an old song. "Onward, onward, warrior, meet thy fate, and show no fear." Then the paper boat collapsed altogether. Out fell the tin soldier, and he was at once swallowed up by a giant fish. Oh, how dark it was in the fish's stomach. It was even worse than the tunnel, and much more cramped. But the tin soldier's courage was quite unchanged. There he lay, steadfast as ever, his musket still on his shoulder. Suddenly the fish swam wildly to and fro, twisted and turned, and then became still. Something flashed through like a streak of lightning, and then all around was cheerful daylight. A voice cried out, "The tin soldier!" This is what had happened. The fish had been caught, taken to market, sold, and carried into the kitchen, where someone had cut it open with a large knife. And now she picked up the soldier, holding him around his waist between her finger and thumb, and took him into the living room so that all the family could see and admire the remarkable character who had traveled back in a fish. But the tin soldier was not proud. He thought nothing of it. He was a humble man. They stood him up at the table, and there, well, the world is full of wonders. He saw that he was in the very same room where his adventures had started. There were the same children. There were the same toys. There was the fine castle with the graceful little dancer at the door. She was still poised on one leg, with the other raised high in the air. Athletic precision and strength and beauty all together. She was steadfast too. The tin soldier was deeply moved. He would have liked to weep tin tears, only that wouldn't have been soldierly behavior. He looked at her, and she looked at him, but not a word passed between them. And then a strange thing happened. One of the small boys picked up the tin soldier and threw him into the fire. He had no reason for doing this. Maybe it was the fault of the snuff-box goblin. The tin soldier stood framed in a blaze of light. The heat was intense, but whether this came from the fire or for his burning love, he could not tell. His bright colors were now completely gone, but whether they had faded on the journey or through his sorrow, no one could say. He looked at the little dancer, and she looked at him. He felt that he was melting, but he still stood steadfast, shouldering arms. Suddenly the door flew open, and a gust of air caught the pretty, beautiful, strong little paper dancer, and she flew like a sylph right into the stove, straight into the waiting tin soldier, and there she flashed into flames and was gone. Soon the soldier melted down into a lump of tin, and the next day, when someone was raking out the ashes, she found him in the shape of a little tin heart. And what remained of the dancer? Only her spangle, and that was as black as the soot. Wow. Well, that's the story of the Steadfast Tin Soldier. I hope you enjoyed it. And always talk about these stories with somebody else who maybe listened to them, or somebody who would listen to you talk about them. Have a great week, and until next week, see you outside.